Childhood is something that we have all experienced. Some of us had had better childhoods than others. However, whatever background you have or whoever you are, you have experienced childhood. Everyone you see in your day-to-day life has experienced childhood, which is why we see crimes against children in a horrific manner. Because all children truly deserve the chance to grow up free from abuse, and the people that know this the best are people who have experienced abuse as a child. Which is why the case that I will cover today is very dark and mysterious, because not only is the victim a child, but to this day it remains unsolved. JonBenet Ramsey was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1990. She was born into a very good family. Her father was John Ramsey, a businessman who worked for a software company in the late 90s. So the internet was in its early stages, so it was a field that paid very well. And her mother was Patsy Ramsey, who was a former beauty pageant contestant. JonBenet was born after Patsy and John already had a child, Burke Ramsey. He is the older brother of JonBenet Ramsey. As I mentioned previously, Patsy was a former beauty pageant queen, so when JonBenet was still a child, her mother enrolled her in child beauty pageants. She would compete in pageants until her death. She would win a number of beauty pageants: America's Royal Miss, Little Miss Chevrolet, Little Miss Colorado, Colorado State Kids, CoverGirl, and National Tiny Miss Beauty. It would not be honest of me not to mention that child beauty pageants are weird and inappropriate, regardless if your mother competed previously before you did. Nevertheless, Patsy would continue to enroll JonBenet in these beauty pageants, and Patsy would defend this by saying that JonBenet enjoyed doing it. She would never force her daughter to do something she didn't want to do. However, it is very hard to believe that it was JonBenet Ramsey's idea to participate in beauty pageants. A very convincing piece of evidence that JonBenet never really liked or enjoyed beauty pageants would be when other children her age would come over. They would see the trophies that she won from various beauty pageants, and one day a friend asked her what that was, pointing to all the trophies and medals she had won at beauty pageants, and JonBenet replied, "They are not really my trophies, they are my mother's trophies." Throughout the life story of JonBenet Ramsey, you will notice more and more that it seemed like Patsy was living her life through her 6-year-old daughter. So in many ways, JonBenet never really had a life, as her mother was living her life for her.
Police. What's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old. How long ago was it? I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's gone. Does it say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? I don't know. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? It says SBTC. Victory. Please. Okay, what's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please. Okay, come. There's somebody. I am, honey. Please. Take a deep breath away, okay? Hurry. Patsy.
On December 25th, 1996, JonBenet would come home with her family from attending a Christmas party. She would fall asleep and her father would carry her upstairs into her bedroom. The next day, on the 26th, the day after Christmas, her mother would wake her up and go downstairs, where she would find a ransom note. I will talk more about the ransom note later. After finding the ransom note, she would call 911. After calling 911, she would also call friends and family members over. They would come over to the house along with 2 other police officers. The only room that wasn't searched was JonBenet's bedroom. The police officers closed down the room, as they were still under the assumption that this was a kidnapping case. However, the rest of the house was contaminated with DNA from family members, friends, and law enforcement. Patsy made the phone call at 5:52 a.m. It wasn't until 1 p.m. that a detective asked John and a family friend to help him search the entire house one more time to see if the first 2 responding officers had missed something. One of the first responding officers checked the basement, but unfortunately, he missed one of the rooms that had a latch on it. John Ramsey would open the door, and he would find his daughter's dead body. JonBenet was dead. Her corpse was covered with a blanket, duct tape was over her mouth, and a nylon cord was wrapped around her wrists, ankles, and her neck. John would carry her body upstairs. An autopsy revealed that JonBenet died due to asphyxiation and a traumatic brain injury to the head. It is still debated on whether or not JonBenet Ramsey was strangled first, then hit in the head, or if she was hit in the head first, then strangled. She was strangled using a nylon cord. While rape was ruled unlikely, her vaginal area had been wiped with a cloth, and lastly she had pineapple in her stomach and digestive tract, which represents that she had ate some before her death. The DNA that was found at the crime scene would be very helpful. However, since Patsy called friends and family over when JonBenet was kidnapped, the entire house was contaminated. The only DNA that was found on the body of JonBenet belonged to John and Patsy. However, it was DNA that could have been there from days or even weeks before her death, so their DNA being present isn't anything out of the ordinary, as they live together, so DNA with people you live with is very easily transferable. However, something that is out of the ordinary is the DNA of an unidentified person on the rope used to strangle JonBenet and under her fingernails. However, once again, this DNA could have belonged to someone who touched JonBenet days before her death, and since she was at a number of parties, it could have belonged to anyone. All we know is it belonged to someone who was male. The ransom note reads exactly as follows. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We're a group of individuals that represents a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed. If you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be well rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you to arrange an early delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for a proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It is now up to you, John. Victory, SBTC. That was the entire ransom note, word for word, including the spelling mistakes. Businesses and possessions were misspelled. The ransom note is, in my opinion, the most interesting piece of evidence there is in this case, because before discussing the actual contents of the ransom note itself, we first have to analyze the fact that it is 2 pages long. What person would kill a child, then spend 20 minutes, which is what police estimate it took to write the note, in the house of the child you just killed? This ransom note was also written using paper and pen that was already inside the house, so this ransom note goes against the purpose of a ransom note. A ransom note is supposed to be quick and to the point. Why include you respect John Ramsey? If you did respect him, you wouldn't kidnap his daughter, would you? You can also very clearly see the letters D-O-N crossed out. So originally they were going to write they don't respect his business, but now they do. Why change it halfway through writing the ransom note? Also, how did they know he was originally from the South? If they knew John was originally from the South, then they would have known where and what he did for a living too, right? The person who wrote this ransom note must have known that John was wealthy, and the amount of $118,000 wasn't very much to him, but it was a Christmas bonus John received from his job that year. Lastly, this note has numerous references to movies. Throughout the letter, there are times when something very similar or exactly is said from a movie. For example, when the author of the ransom note says, "Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded," is very similar to a scene from the movie Nick of Time. Another example is when the author of the ransom note says, "If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies." The cadence and the way you say "if you do X, she dies" is directly from the movie Ruthless People, and when they mention talking to stray dogs, that is from the movie Dirty Harry.
Hello. Mr. Stone, listen very carefully. We have kidnapped your wife. We have no qualms about killing and will do so at the slightest provocation. Do you understand? Who the hell is this? Is this some kind of a joke? I have no patience for stupid questions, Mr. Stone, and I don't like repeating myself. Do you understand? All right. I'm sorry. Please continue. You are to obtain a new black American Tourister briefcase, model number 8104. Do you understand? Yes. In it, you will place $500,000 in unmarked, non-sequentially numbered $100 bills. Do you understand? Sure. Monday morning at 11 a.m., you will proceed with case in hand to Hope Street Plaza and wait for a phone to ring. You will receive further instructions then. Do you understand? Yes, I do. You will be watched at all phases of execution. If anyone is with you, or if any action is not carried out to our complete satisfaction, it will be considered an infraction of the rules, and your wife will be killed. Do you understand? I believe so. If you notify the police, your wife will be killed. If you notify the media, she will be killed. If you deviate from our instructions in any way whatsoever, she will be killed. Do you understand? Perfectly.
Lastly is when the author of the note writes, "Don't try to grow a brain, John." That line is directly from the movie Speed.
I need to talk to these people face to face. They think you're bullshit.
They don't think that.
Look, you want the money, I don't want anyone else to die. Let me get on the ground. Just me. That's not against the rules.
All right, I want you back real fast.
Fine.
Jack, nothing tricky now. You know that I'm on top of you. Do not attempt to grow a brain.
One of them, it could encourage other terrorists.
Theory number 1 is that JonBenet Ramsey was killed by her father John, and he is the one responsible for her death. There are a number of reasons as to why John would be responsible. The first is that he was able to locate her body after police searched the entire house. He was also the last person that saw JonBenet alive as he carried her to her bedroom. Lastly, there is the fact that he never bothered to alert authorities to the fact that there was an open window in the basement. The reason he never told authorities is because he planned to stage everything to make it look like an intruder had broken into the house and kidnapped JonBenet. However, while this theory does explain some pieces of evidence in the case, it doesn't have a motive. Why would John kill his own daughter? If John truly killed his daughter, it was for no reason, because there seems to be no motive for John to kill JonBenet. Let us assume that, hypothetically speaking, John was in fact sexually abusing JonBenet. That still will not explain him killing her, because adults who chronically abuse children keep them alive in order to continually abuse them. So even if he did, hypothetically speaking, sexually abuse his daughter, it wouldn't explain him killing her.
To those of you who may want to ask, let me address very directly, I did not kill my daughter JonBenet. There have also been innuendos that she has been or was sexually molested. I can tell you those were the most hurtful innuendos to us as a family. They are totally false. JonBenet and I had a very close relationship. I will miss her dearly for the rest of my life.
The second theory is that Patsy was the one who was responsible for JonBenet's murder. There are a number of pieces of evidence that point towards Patsy. The first one is the handwriting similarities between the author of the ransom note and Patsy. John had his handwriting analyzed, and it wasn't a match. However, Patsy's handwriting was labeled as inconclusive. Another piece of evidence was to the public, it seemed like Patsy was at best not fazed by the death of her daughter, as in most TV interviews, she appeared completely stone-faced, which is not necessarily out of character, as people react to death differently, but Patsy had a face of guilt, which is why many people theorized that she accidentally killed JonBenet in a fit of rage. JonBenet was prone to bedwetting, which would upset any parent. However, this time, on Christmas night, Patsy accidentally hit JonBenet or shoved her head hard enough for her to hit her head, causing a skull fracture. And in a panic, she told John, who helped her stage her death as a kidnapping, as she was afraid of going to jail. Her bedwetting before death would explain why her room was a mess before her death, as Patsy was frustrated with the constant bedwetting and yelled at her. Plus, it would explain why her vaginal area was wiped with a cloth, because she peed herself before her death. It also explains why Patsy would invite friends and family over during the first few hours of JonBenet allegedly kidnapping, because it was possible she wanted a support network. However, it is also possible she wanted to contaminate the crime scene, which was her house.
Theory that this was an accident. JonBenet got up, or something happens, there's an accident, somebody...
You're going down the wrong path, buddy.
Okay, somebody accidentally, or somebody gets upset over bedwetting. That's one of the things that's been proposed. Okay.
Didn't happen. If she got up in the night and ran into somebody, it was somebody there that wasn't supposed to be there. I don't know what transpired after that, whether it was an accident, intentional, premeditated, or whatnot. But it was not one of her 3 family members that were also in that house. Period. End of statement.
The third theory is that Burke, who is JonBenet's brother, was the one who accidentally killed JonBenet. The reason as to why Burke killed JonBenet, well, it was accidental. See, when children are really young, they do not know their own strength and the consequences of certain actions. It is theorized that Burke made himself a midnight snack of pineapples and milk, and then JonBenet came down and started eating his food, and because Burke was angry, he reacted with violence and hit JonBenet in the head with a flashlight. That was the flashlight pictured next to the pineapples and milk. Since children are irrational and for the most part act out of instinct, Burke did not realize how strong he was compared to JonBenet. Secondly, he did not know that JonBenet was a child and children's skulls are growing and developing, so in her case it is much easier to fracture a 6-year-old skull than an adult skull. Lastly, it is impossible to know if Burke meant it or if he was unaware of the outcomes of his actions. When Patsy and John found out, they helped cover up the crime and made it look like an intruder kidnapped JonBenet, because they knew they already had one child dead and they weren't willing to lose another child. The last theory is that this is truly the work of an intruder, as 2 people were named as suspects that are outside the immediate family of JonBenet Ramsey. One of these individuals was the man the Ramseys hired to play Santa Claus. His name was Bill McReynolds. He was hired by people and sometimes companies to play Santa Claus. However, he always made unsavory remarks to the press when he found out about JonBenet's kidnapping, saying, "Her murder was harder on me than my operation. She had a profound change in me." Which is something that is inappropriate to say about a 6-year-old girl when he is a 65-year-old man. However, DNA was collected that belonged to Bill, and it was not a match to any DNA found inside the house. He genuinely seemed like a man that loved spending time with kids and found joy in playing Santa Claus. The second suspect is a man named Gary Olivia, who lived near the Ramsey's house. He lived within a 20-minute radius of the Ramsey's house. Gary Olivia wouldn't be considered a suspect until 2016, when he was arrested on child pornography charges, which would then bring up his arrest in the year 2000. When he was arrested on drug charges, and his backpack was a picture of JonBenet Ramsey. When officers searched his home, they found the shrine that Gary had built for JonBenet. When questioned, Gary said, "JonBenet's death touched me deeply. She was an exceptional girl. Her death was an exceptional loss." While his friend would later recount pretty good evidence, he wouldn't bring it to authorities. Instead, he would sell it to a gossip tabloid, which diminished the authenticity of the claims he is making. In the end, we're left with the body of a dead child and no answers. If JonBenet were alive today, she would be a 33-year-old woman. She would have been alive for 33 years, when in reality, her life was cut so short, she was only alive for 6 years. Currently, I have no hope that this case will ever be solved, and even less hope that the person responsible will be brought to justice for ending the life of a child who didn't even get to live. However, I do have hope that somewhere out there, the person responsible for this crime knows that they might not have to face justice in a courtroom, but somewhere they will face justice. And as always, thank you for watching.